The silence was deceptive. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Beneath the shattered skyline of what was once downtown Minneapolis, a group of 6 survivors tiptoed into a forgotten structure known only on old maps as the Oral Institute, a once-abandoned sound research facility built into the bedrock beneath the city. Locals used to call it the maze because of its twisted hallways and echoing chambers that distorted sound. But now silence ruled. Absolute, unnatural silence. No birds. No breeze. Not even the moan of the undead. And that terrified them more than anything. "Stay close," whispered Elena, the de facto leader of the group. She was a former acoustic engineer, thin, sharp-eyed, and always calculating. In the weeks since the outbreak, she'd noticed something. The infected were drawn to sound like moths to flame. But not just any sound, specific frequencies, vibrations, patterns. The Institute, she believed, held secrets about that. Behind her trudged Jace, the youngest at just 17. His sister Mara clutched his arm. Their parents had been among the first to fall when the outbreak began. Now the siblings rarely spoke, as if afraid their voices might summon the dead. And at the rear, Barrett, a grizzled former firefighter, dragged a battered radio set and a homemade directional mic. He didn't say much either, but when he did, people listened. Inside the facility, the halls were lined with rusted soundproof panels. Layers of dust muffled their steps. A low hum, barely perceptible, echoed underfoot like the building itself still breathed. They moved room to room, clearing with silent hand signals. Old equipment sat untouched. Reels of magnetic tape, recording consoles, and racks of frequency analyzers from the 1980s. In one room, a wall chart detailed something called Project Reverberate. "What is this place?" Mara asked softly, unable to keep quiet any longer. Elena stared at the chart, eyes scanning terms like frequency manipulation, psychoacoustic control, and cochlear disruption. This place studied how sound affects the human brain. If we're lucky, they figured out something the infected can't stand. Barrett leaned over a console and tapped a key. Static hissed. Jace immediately tensed and spun toward the hallway. "Shoo," Mara hissed. They froze. Then a soft dragging sound echoed from deeper within the corridor. Something was down there. Elena motioned to power down the equipment, but it was too late. The hum had changed pitch, subtle but distinct. And the silence was breaking. A door burst open. From the shadows emerged a figure, pale, limping, head twitching with every movement. Its ears were bleeding, and it moved erratically as if something was disorienting it. It didn't see them yet. Elena watched it closely. "It's reacting to the frequencies." The group slowly backed into an observation room. Barrett clutched his mic and set it toward the hallway, switching it on. He twisted a dial and adjusted the pitch, something between a dog whistle and a piercing feedback loop. The creature shrieked and slammed its head into the wall, again and again, before finally collapsing. No one breathed. "That wasn't normal," Jace said wide-eyed. "It's more than that," Elena replied, fingers dancing across the controls. "We can fight back without guns or traps. With sound." Barrett shook his head. "But if we mess this up?" Elena nodded. "It could draw an entire horde." They spent the next few hours sweeping through the facility. Some rooms were sealed. Others had signs that said audio experiments, high sensitivity area. They marked these on a salvaged clipboard, trying to map the maze. Elena's plan was forming fast. This place could be a base. Maybe even a weapon. But the silence outside didn't last. By evening, they found signs of breach, claw marks on the steel entry door. Jace spotted smears of blood that hadn't been there before. "They're coming," he said. "Not yet," Elena whispered, eyes on the main console. "We need one more test. If we can create a pulse strong enough, we might repel them entirely." But outside the reinforced walls, the air grew heavier. Dozens of infected had gathered, silent, unmoving, as if waiting for a signal. They weren't mindless. Not anymore. And from somewhere deep inside the maze, a speaker crackled to life. A voice, distorted, ancient, whispered, "You're not the first to try. But silence is not safety." The speaker's hiss faded, but the damage was done. Everyone stood frozen, staring at the rusted ceiling speaker that had just spoken. "That voice," Barrett muttered. "It knew we were here." Jace backed toward the console. "Is someone else alive down here?" Elena's face tightened. "Or something wants us to think that." Outside the secure room, the infected remained eerily still, like statues, watching. Barrett knelt beside the microphone setup and turned off the signal generator they'd been testing. "Maybe we woke something up. Something old." Elena looked over the sound map they'd drawn, lines showing how different chambers within the facility could isolate or amplify sound. Project Reverberate wasn't just research, she said. It was a weapon. A test site. Jace walked toward one of the old filing cabinets and pulled out a folder marked Restricted, Level Red. Inside were sketches of strange headsets, diagrams of wave frequencies and scribbled warnings. Sound can do more than deafen. It can rewrite instinct. Look at this, Jace said, holding it out. They were experimenting on people. Mara scanned the page and paled. You don't think they did this to the infected? Maybe not all of them, Elena said. But some might have been exposed to these frequencies before the outbreak. Could explain the organized behavior. The silence. Barrett didn't like any of it. So what do? We hole up here while those things stare at the walls? No, Elena said firmly. We finish mapping the sound grid. If we can isolate which frequencies repel them and which attract, we can control them, or at least push them back. Jace was already flipping switches. There's a chamber labeled Echo 4 in the sublevel. Says it was the core of the sound testing system. Mara frowned. You mean the place that probably sent that voice through the speaker? Barrett sighed. Great. Let's walk into the haunted basement of zombie science. They geared up. Flashlights, noise-canceling headsets, hand axes. No guns. Too loud. One wrong echo and they'd be surrounded. The stairs to Echo 4 creaked under their weight. The lower levels were colder, lined with narrow halls and black glass observation windows. Each turn of the maze echoed like footsteps behind them. Elena kept her eyes on the walls, tapping gently to test sound resonance. At the end of one corridor, a steel door blocked their way. On it was a phrase etched in red. Those who listen too long lose themselves. Comforting, Jace muttered. Elena pried the door open. Inside Echo 4, the walls were completely lined with anechoic foam, spikes jutting out to absorb sound. A large glass panel divided the chamber, behind which lay a control desk filled with analog meters and dials. Cables slithered across the floor like snakes. On the far wall, a speaker the size of a car tire sat embedded into a concrete panel labeled Pulse Channel 1, do not activate. I've seen this kind of setup, Elena whispered. They weren't just studying sound, they were embedding messages into it. Barrett ran a hand over the dust-covered controls. Could explain why that thing upstairs was bleeding from the ears. Suddenly, a static crackle came through one of the headsets. Mara pulled hers off and pointed toward the speaker. It was faint, but a voice again. Echo lives in memory. Echo lives in blood. Barrett flipped a dial. Who is this? No reply. Instead, a sudden pulse of low-frequency vibration shook the chamber. From above, a shriek echoed down through the vents. The infected were moving. Jace's voice cracked with fear. They heard it. They're coming. Elena's fingers flew across the console. If I can reverse the pulse, we might be able to scramble their senses. Mara looked toward the vent. The distant thuds of feet, many feet, were growing louder. Barrett pulled a fire axe from his back. Make it fast. Elena activated the pulse generator. The machine screamed, not with sound but pressure. Everyone felt it in their bones. Outside the door, the infected shrieked, and began slamming into walls, into each other. Elena turned the dial again and they fell silent. It worked. For now. But the system began to flicker, red warning lights flashing. System overload. Jace pointed to the panel. We have to shut it down. It's drawing too much power. No, Elena said, eyes wide. It's not just power. It's calling something. From the dark speaker, the voice returned, louder, broken, metallic. They silenced us. Now we speak in screams. Suddenly, from beyond the glass wall, a figure stood up. Tall, unnatural, wearing an old headset fused to its skull. Its jaw was missing, but its eyes burned with awareness. It wasn't like the others. It looked directly at them and smiled. The thing behind the glass didn't move at first. It just stared. Its eyes glowed faintly, as if pulsing to a rhythm no one else could hear. The headset melted into its skull, gave off a faint clicking sound, like the crackle of broken radio static, and its head tilted slightly, curious, almost listening. What is that? Mara whispered. Not just another infected, Elena breathed. It's a carrier. Barrett stepped forward. Hey, what? Someone they experimented on? Someone whose brain was changed by this place. It's not mindless. It remembers. The lights flickered again. The control panel sparked. From the vent above, a moaning chorus echoed, rising in volume. The horde had arrived and they were moving fast. Jace turned to the glass. If that thing gets out. As if in answer, the figure lifted one elongated arm and tapped the glass. Once, twice, in perfect rhythm. On the third tap, a sharp frequency pulsed through the room. Everyone flinched. Elena's vision blurred for a second. Jace dropped to one knee, clutching his ears. It's broadcasting a signal, Elena gasped. It's controlling them. The glass behind the figure vibrated violently, and a hairline crack snaked from top to bottom. Barrett moved. We're not staying here. He grabbed the mic and swept it across the dial, activating a high-frequency counterwave. The humming in their heads eased, but the carrier creature snarled, its hand slapping the glass with unnatural strength. We need to shut this place down, Barrett said. All of it. No, Elena snapped. We need to take control of it. Mara pointed at the door. Control it later, they're inside. Screams echoed from the hallway above. The infected were pouring through the upper maze, slamming into walls, screeching with coordinated howls. Elena grabbed a flash drive from the console. There's a data cache here, schematics, frequencies, logs. If we can study it, we can weaponize the sound pulses. The glass behind them shattered. The carrier was coming. Move! Barrett bellowed, dragging Elena by the arm. They fled out the side corridor as the creature climbed through the broken panel, its headset sparking, body twitching with unnatural rhythm. The infected were behind them now, filling the hall with shrill cries, their footsteps pounding like a war drum. They ran through the maze, past the warning signs, past the abandoned labs. Jace stopped long enough to slam a metal door closed behind them, locking it with a loose chain. But he could hear the things slamming into it, one after another. Their only chance now was the acoustic chamber marked on the old maps, a place where all sound could be controlled, redirected, or killed. Elena skidded to a stop in front of a heavy door marked Chamber 7, full spectrum isolation. Help me, she shouted. Barrett and Mara pulled it open and the group stumbled inside. Instant silence. Not just quiet, total silence. Even their own breathing felt distant, swallowed by the perfectly engineered foam on the walls. The infected outside suddenly went quiet as if they too could feel the void. We're safe, Jace asked. Not safe, Elena muttered. Just hidden. For now. She pulled the flash drive from her pocket and inserted it into a dusty laptop connected to the chamber's controls. Files began to load, waveforms, journal logs, archived test audio. One file caught her eye. Subject Z0. Neural imprinting via subsonic looping. She opened it. A black and white video flickered to life. A restrained man sat in a chair, headset strapped tight, eyes vacant. A voice, monotone, distorted, repeated a single phrase over and over. Forget the pain. Forget the name. Obey the tone. The subject began to twitch. Then scream. Then he smiled. Elena slammed the lid closed. This wasn't research, she said quietly. It was control. They were building programmable killers. Barrett paced the room, fists clenched. So the outbreak didn't just happen, it was triggered. And now that thing out there, Z0 or whatever it is, it's leading them, Mara whispered. They don't hunt by sight, Elena said slowly, they hunt by sound memory. Echoes. Patterns burned into them. Barrett turned to her. Then what do? We give them something new to hear. She stood and approached the main console, her fingers flying over keys. This chamber can emit a full-spectrum frequency pulse. If we tune it right, we might wipe their memory, break the signal Z0 is sending. Jace looked hesitant. And if it doesn't work? We go deaf, Barrett said flatly. Elena smiled grimly. Let's make some noise. Outside, the pounding on the door had begun again. The infected were closing in. And behind them the carrier was listening. The door to Chamber 7 shuddered on its hinges. Each slam from the infected horde outside echoed through the heavy steel, despite the chamber's powerful acoustic dampening. It wasn't sound, they were feeling the vibrations. Inside the air was still. Every breath felt like it carried weight. Elena stood over the frequency panel, her eyes darting between readings on the screen. The pulse must be exact, she said. We overshoot by even half a decibel and we could fry our own brains. Barrett adjusted the directional mic stand, positioning it near the chamber's outer audio emitter. Do it clean. One shot. Jace paced nervously, glancing toward the sealed door. How can we be sure this will even affect them? We can't, Elena admitted. But if sound controls them, then sound can break them. Outside, something heavier struck the door. Not just infected. The carrier was close. Mara leaned against the chamber wall, pressing a palm to it. They're right there. Just waiting. Elena clicked open the digital file labeled Disruptor Frequency A, Full Wave Pulse. This frequency was never meant for communication, she said. It was designed to wipe memory, erase thoughts, maybe even override behavior. Barrett raised an eyebrow. You're saying we're using it as a kind of brain cleaner? Exactly, she said. Only now we're pointing it at what's left of a brain. Jace hesitated. And what if some of them aren't gone? What if, inside those monsters, there's still something human? Elena paused. That's why we don't fire it into the world, she replied quietly. Just the immediate corridor. Just enough to make Z0 lose control. The console flashed a warning. Emitter ready. Finalize target range. Barrett nodded. Then it's now or never. Elena turned the dial. Mic focused, directional, blast radius 50 feet. Another slam, louder this time. The chamber door creaked. A long crack snaked across the outer frame. Then came a sound that didn't belong. A voice. Through the crack from the hallway Z0 was whispering. Open the door. Open your mind. The silence lied. Jay stepped back. Is it talking to us? No, Elena whispered, adjusting the mic. It's talking to them. Z0's voice wasn't just speech. It pulsed with layers, hidden tones that caused subconscious muscle twitches. Elena felt it crawl down her spine. Barrett grit his teeth. Hit it. Now. Elena pressed the trigger. A low-frequency blast erupted from the chamber, inaudible but devastating. The air rippled with pressure. Lights flickered. The chamber's walls vibrated like tuning forks. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then came the screaming. Through the small observation slit, they watched as the infected began to writhe, hands over ears, heads smashing into the walls. Some collapsed instantly. Others clawed at their own skulls. The coordinated rhythm that had once unified them shattered. Chaos replaced order. Z0 stumbled backward. Sparks shot from his headset. He roared, not with rage but with pain. Barrett's voice was tight. It's working. They're breaking. Mara grabbed the mic and shouted, again. Hit them again. Elena reinitiated the pulse. Another wave surged. The glass in the hallway cracked. The carrier howled, smashing its own head against the wall, trying to silence the noise that now lived inside it. Then it stopped. All of it. The infected fell, motionless. Z0 dropped to his knees, blood dripping from beneath the melted headset. His eyes, once glowing, were now dim. Empty. Silence returned, but not the same silence. This one felt earned. Elena exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. We disrupted the link. Z0's network is broken. Barrett leaned against the wall, staring at the blank screen. You just gave them back their minds, or took them away forever? Mara looked shaken. Do you think Z0 was the first? No, Elena said. But he was the strongest. And if there are more out there, this pulse may be our only weapon. Jace sat down, running a hand through his hair. So what now? We stay here and wait for the next one to show up? No, Elena said, standing. Now we build our own network. One that protects instead of controls. She pointed at the laptop. These files, Project Reverberate, this is proof. Proof the outbreak wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to program obedience through fear. We need to take this to other survivors. We need to warn them. Barrett checked the mic battery. You think they'll believe us? They will when they see what sound can do. Suddenly, a soft static returned to the console, just a whisper of distortion. You broke the chain, but not the source. The group turned, staring at the screen. The voice wasn't Z0. It was deeper. Colder. Elena stepped back. There's something more. Something beneath all of this. Barrett's jaw clenched. Then we haven't finished the fight. The chamber lights buzzed, dimming for a brief second before returning to their normal glow. Everyone stared at the console where the final whisper had come through. You broke the chain, but not the source. Jace leaned in. That wasn't Z0, was it? Elena's eyes scanned the waveforms on the screen. No. It was deeper. Controlled. Like a command node. Mara stepped back from the console. Wait, are you saying there's something beyond Z0? Something in charge? Barrett holstered his mic, glancing toward the hallway. The infected lay motionless, broken by the sonic pulse, but the tension hadn't left the air. If anything, it had thickened. Yes, Elena said. And if that voice is right, then Z0 was only a relay, an amplifier of something far more dangerous. Then where's it coming from? Jace asked. Elena's hands flew over the keyboard, digging into the old project logs. A string of archived command entries scrolled past. Most were corrupted or encrypted, but one file stood out, labeled simply, Vault B9, Experimental Source Host. She clicked it open. A single sentence appeared on screen. Silence lives below. A small map lit up, displaying a tunnel system beneath the lowest levels of the facility. Most of the maze they had explored was above this level. This was something else. Barrett squinted at the flickering lines. Looks like a sealed subcomplex. Off the grid. A vault, Elena whispered. Where they kept whatever was generating the core signal. Mara's voice cracked. And we're going toward it? Elena nodded grimly. If we want to end this, yes. We stop the source or this just starts over somewhere else. They restocked quickly, flashlights, headsets, emergency frequency dampeners. Jace carried the directional mic slung across his back like a weapon. Elena downloaded all project data onto a second flash drive. If they didn't make it out, someone else had to know what had happened here. The path down was hidden behind a rusted maintenance door tucked into the farthest hallway. They pried it open, revealing a spiraling stairwell lined with black cables and faded warning signs. Do not proceed without audio shielding. Authorized personnel only, a vault access. The deeper they went, the colder it got. A thick, unnatural chill, not from temperature but from pressure. It felt like the air was pressing inward on them. Halfway down the sound changed. Not louder. Just wrong. The silence became too complete. Even their footsteps stopped echoing. They could hear nothing, not their breathing, not the gear shifting on their backs. It was as if sound itself had been swallowed. Elena stopped and activated the portable frequency shield. A soft hum surrounded them, barely audible but enough to break the deadening field. We're close, she whispered. Vault B9 should be just ahead. At the bottom of the stairwell, they reached a set of heavy vault doors sealed with an old retinal scanner. The panel flickered, sparking slightly. Jace pointed to a ventilation grate nearby. We can crawl through if the scanner's dead. Mara went first, pushing through the narrow shaft. One by one they followed, until the crawlspace opened into a darkened control room lined with thick glass and abandoned monitoring equipment. Beyond the glass, a second chamber sat sealed, larger than the others, the walls covered in acoustic tiles layered in spiral patterns. In the center, a humanoid figure hung suspended from the ceiling by dozens of wires. Its head was encased in a full sound isolation helmet, tubes running into its mouth and ears. The body twitched ever so slightly, like it was dreaming, or remembering. On the glass, someone had written in red marker. Host 1, do not awaken. Silence must not speak. Barrett stepped back. That's it. That's the source. But what is it? Mara asked. Elena stepped up to the control panel and pulled the power logs. It's been broadcasting for years, even after the facility was abandoned. Through underground lines, radio towers, maybe even through the infected themselves. Zero wasn't leading them, he was repeating this. She pointed to a series of frequency logs, rhythmic, constant, layered tones. Beneath them, something stranger, messages encoded as vibrations, not words. Barrett scanned the room. Then let's kill the power. No, Elena said. If we shut it off wrong, we could trigger a feedback loop. It might amplify the signal instead of cutting it. Jace looked out at the suspended figure. Then what do we do? Elena paused. We replace the signal. They turned to her. Override it, she explained. Input a new frequency, one that tells the infected to go dormant. Something neutral, something silent. Barrett exhaled. That's going to mean getting close to that thing, isn't it? Elena nodded. We need to plug the mic directly into the main transmitter port. And someone has to do it manually. The others stared through the glass at Host 1. The air around it shimmered like heat mirage, though the chamber was freezing cold. Mara's voice trembled. We override it, or the silence becomes permanent. The room vibrated with a silence so dense it felt alive. Host 1 hung motionless behind the glass, suspended like a puppet by dozens of audio cable tendrils. The full-head isolation helmet pulsed faintly, rhythmic, steady, like a heartbeat conducted through machinery. The group stood frozen, staring at the source of the signal that had haunted their steps since entering the maze. Override it, Elena repeated, more firmly this time. We cut its control and replace it with something clean, something neutral. Barrett squinted at the strange headset feeding into the figure. And if the machine doesn't like being unplugged? Then we all hear our own screams on loop, Jace muttered, swallowing hard. I'll do it, Elena said. Barrett grabbed her arm. No. You've got the map in your head. You're the only one who knows how to maintain the signal. Let me go. She hesitated. He was right. One misstep, and the new pulse they planned to broadcast could backfire, scramble them instead of the infected. I'll patch the mic line, Barrett continued. You trigger the override from here. Elena nodded slowly and handed him the directional mic, now rewired with the frequency they'd created back in Chamber 7. A silent pulse. One that told infected minds to sleep instead of hunt. Mara knelt at the glass control panel and began inputting access commands. Unlocking the vault, now. A hiss of compressed air escaped as the doors to Host One's chamber slowly slid open. The sudden rush of pure stillness made everyone instinctively cover their ears, even though there was no sound. Barrett stepped into the chamber. The temperature dropped instantly. Frost gathered on his sleeves. His boots crunched softly over layers of old, brittle acoustic foam. The air was thick with pressure like walking underwater. Host One twitched. Elena watched nervously from the control room. Barrett, keep your movements slow. Its sensors might still be active. Barrett nodded, moving around the suspended figure. Up close, it was even worse. Host One's skin was pale gray veined with black. Its body was emaciated, but its head pulsed with electrical signals, dancing through the headset like a storm caught in glass. He found the jack, an ancient XLR port buried beneath coiled cables. I'm connecting the mic, he whispered. In the control room, Elena locked the signal on standby. A soft crackle echoed from the speaker beside her, barely audible but unmistakable. Override denied. What? She muttered. I didn't even start it yet. The screens went black. A burst of static slammed through the control room speakers. Elena stumbled back. Mara shielded her ears. Jace grabbed the side panel and forced a manual restart. The screens flickered back, just in time for them to see Host One's head slowly lift. No, 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 Elena whispered. In the chamber, Barrett froze. Host One turned toward him, its head jerking unnaturally. The helmet glowed. A soft tone, low, pure, relentless, began to rise from deep inside the chamber. Elena, it's waking up. Barrett shouted. She slammed the override sequence. Engaging new pulse, now. Host One screamed, not with a voice but through every speaker, every wire, every surface in the vault. The walls vibrated violently. Waves of raw frequency poured through the facility, knocking Jace and Mara to the ground. Elena, it's fighting the pulse. Jace yelled. Barrett dropped to one knee, blood trickling from his nose. It's in my head. Elena, do it again. Harder. She grit her teeth and slammed the dial to maximum. The silent pulse launched. For one unbearable moment, everything stopped. Then slowly, the tone reversed. Host One's head snapped back. Its body convulsed as the cables twitched and unraveled like snakes slithering away from a fire. Barrett ripped the old mic free and rammed the new one in. The override took hold. The pulse changed, soft, calm, pure. And as it flowed outward, the facility changed with it. Across the maze, infected dropped where they stood, not in pain but in surrender. Their eyes lost the glow. Their limbs slackened. The silence that once hunted them now became a blanket, soft, peaceful, and absolute. Back in the chamber, Host One hung limply. The helmet no longer pulsed. The signal was gone. Barrett staggered out, barely upright. Elena caught him just before he collapsed. It's done, he rasped. Mara stared at the chamber, wide-eyed. Did we win? Jace shook his head. I don't think it was about winning. Elena looked down at the final transmission logs. Host One wasn't just a broadcast station. It was a prisoner. The real question is, who built it and why did they abandon it here? The screen blinked again. One final message appeared. Override accepted. Listening, complete. The signal died. But somewhere beneath the system, a second node flickered to life, far from the maze. They hadn't stopped the silence. They'd just redirected it. The pulse had faded, and with it, the monstrous tension that had wrapped around the maze like a suffocating shroud. The walls no longer vibrated. The infected that once clawed through corridors and screamed in unison now lay scattered, unmoving, quiet at last. But peace, as always in this world, was temporary. In the control room above Vault B9, the survivors watched the screen go dark, except for one blinking icon. It glowed red, then orange, then green. A single line of text appeared. Node 02 online. Awaiting confirmation. Jace leaned forward. What the hell is that? Elena's hands flew across the console. It's another broadcast point. Another source like host 1. Barrett winced as he sat, blood still drying along his temple. So we didn't end it, we just uncovered the next layer. Mara backed away from the screen. I thought we shut it down. I thought this nightmare was over. It's not, Elena whispered. It never was. Host 1 was only one branch of something bigger, a network. Whatever started all this, it wasn't confined to this maze. The room was silent again. Not dead listening. Elena opened the last recovered files from the system. Most were corrupted beyond use. But one document remained intact. Project Threshold, Phase 2 deployment sites. Coordinates. A list of them. Jace counted at least 11. And one was already active, flashing green with the label. Node 02, Northern Array. Barrett leaned closer. You think they're waking up, one by one? Elena nodded. And each one might have its own host, its own voice. A sudden jolt ran through the floor. They all jumped. Barrett stood quickly. That wasn't from here. Elena scanned the monitors. It came from above, closer to the surface. Mara pressed her headset to her ear. I'm hearing movement again. Not infected, footsteps. Barrett grabbed his axe. Rescue team? Elena shook her head. No one's supposed to know this place exists. At least no one who didn't build it. Jace frowned. Then who? Before he could finish, a new feed came online, an overhead camera from the main stairwell. 4 figures in black tactical gear moved down the corridor, silent, fluid, efficient. Their faces were hidden behind audio-dampening visors. Each of them wore a patch on their shoulder, a spiral-shaped insignia. Military? Mara asked. No, Elena whispered. They're cleaners. Barrett stiffened. To erase what we just found? To bury it, she replied. They don't want the signal broken. They want it controlled. Jace's eyes widened. Then we're not just survivors anymore. We're witnesses. The power flickered as the strangers reached the lower level. From another monitor they watched the team sweep through the hall, checking vitals of the collapsed infected, logging, scanning, documenting. One of the operatives stopped in front of the Vault B9 door. He placed a device on the wall, a small sphere that blinked red. Explosives, Barrett muttered. They're going to seal it, Elena said. Erase host 1. Erase us. Mara looked at her. What do we do? Elena opened the backup drive and connected it to the console. We send out what we know. The override file, the voice logs, the second node coordinates, all of it. Someone has to know the truth. She uploaded the data to a hidden satellite relay buried in the facility's emergency backup line. The transfer bar inched forward as a robotic voice announced. 30 seconds until connection complete. Outside the door, the footsteps grew closer. Jace armed the emergency frequency emitter again. Barrett readied his axe. Elena watched the screen. Just hold them off a little longer. Suddenly, the hallway cameras blinked out. The door to the control room hissed. They're breaching. Jace yelled. Barrett rushed to the panel and activated the fallback lockdown. Reinforced shutters dropped over the observation windows, sealing them in temporary protection. 20 seconds, Elena muttered. The first explosion rattled the outer hallway. The team was trying to blast through, methodically, without rushing. Jace pointed to another blinking light on the console. Node 03 just came online. They're activating them faster, Elena whispered. We must have triggered something by overriding host 1. 15 seconds, the system announced. Mara took Elena's hand. You get that message out or all this means nothing. Elena stared at her. We will. Barrett stood by the door, mic in hand, ready to unleash one last frequency burst if the strangers forced entry. He looked back once, expression calm. If they come through, he said, we make sure they know we heard everything. 10 seconds. Outside, a second blast shook the door loose. 5. Jace covered the drive with his hand, praying. 3. The door burst open. 2 of the strangers entered with weapons raised, but Elena hit the enter key before they could speak. Transfer complete. Signal sent. She smiled. Even if they didn't make it out, someone out there now knew the silence had been broken. To be continued in Part 8. The voice that won't be buried. Ask ChatGPT. The door slammed open as the blast faded, and 2 operatives in black flooded into the room. Behind them, smoke coiled through the hallway, wrapping around the red spiral insignia glowing on their shoulders. One raised a sonic stunner, aimed directly at Elena. Barrett moved first. He hurled the frequency mic forward and detonated a sharp pulse. It wasn't loud, but the wave hit like a punch. The lead operative staggered, dropping to one knee, and the second stumbled back, caught in the narrow shockwave. Go! Barrett shouted. Elena didn't hesitate. She ripped the flash drive from the console and bolted toward the opposite corridor. Jace and Mara followed, ducking under cables and leaping over debris. Behind them, Barrett blocked the door. Another operative entered, unaffected by the pulse. He drew a baton and advanced. Barrett stood tall, axe in hand. You're not silencing this. The two clashed in the narrow space, metal against wood, silence against defiance. Barrett didn't win, but he bought them time. Elena led the others through the maze, retracing the old sound mapping route. The facility trembled under the pressure of the demolition team, sealing every trace of Project Threshold. I sent the file, Elena said breathlessly as they ran. Coordinates, audio, test logs, all of it. To who? Mara asked. To everyone. I tied it into every emergency frequency I could reach. Someone will hear it. Jace's headset crackled to life, faint but real. Repeat, this is Outpost Helix. We received your signal. Who are you? They froze. Jace fumbled with the headset. This is Jace Mathers. We're survivors. We've uncovered something dangerous. We saw. You're not the only ones anymore. We've been tracking the nodes too. Whatever's waking up, it's spreading. Mara leaned in. Can you help us? If you can get to open ground, we can pull you out. But hurry, more nodes are activating. And the silence isn't staying underground anymore. The line went dead. Elena's heart pounded. Then we get to the roof. They reached the main access stairwell, climbing through the wreckage of the upper levels. The infected lay still, at peace. Their minds had been severed from the signal, but who knew for how long? If the next node went active, they might rise again, following a new voice. At the top, daylight poured through a shattered skylight. They burst onto the rooftop just as a distant helicopter roared into view. It wasn't military, at least not government. It bore no flag, no nation. Just a white emblem, a cracked speaker overlaid with a rising sun. Elena waved her hands, holding the flash drive high. Rope lines dropped. Operatives in different gear, non-hostile, fast, grabbed them and pulled them aboard. Inside the cabin, a woman in gray tactical gear greeted them. Her face was lined but calm. Focused. You're the ones who broke Host 1? Elena nodded. And found proof it wasn't the only one. The woman nodded. We know. We've seen 2 more activate in the last hour. We're trying to intercept the signals, but we need help from people who understand sound. She turned toward the pilot and pointed to a screen, new nodes lighting up, a spreading pattern across the continent. Where are we going? Jace asked. The woman answered without hesitation. To stop the next voice before it starts speaking. Mara looked out the window as the facility below began to implode, charges finally detonating, sealing Vault B9 beneath rubble and silence. Elena held the flash drive tightly. Even if we bury it, it will never stay buried. No, the woman said. But now the silence isn't in control. Elena met her eyes. Then it's time we spoke louder than the ones who tried to keep us quiet. The helicopter soared over the ruined city. Below, thousands of infected lay still, quiet for now. But in a data center hundreds of miles away, a screen blinked to life. Node 03, live. Transmission pending. Primary voice ready. The silence was waiting for the next command. And now, so were the ones ready to fight it. The end. Thank you for listening to In the Maze of Silence, They Found Their Voice and Fought Back, Zombies audiobook. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe for more suspenseful survival tales every week. Stay sharp, stay strong, and never trust the silence.